my absolute honor to introduce the panel today. The panel will be discussing on diversity and inclusion. So first of our panelists is Dr. Robert Rivers. He's the program director at the NIH. Second, we have Paula Rogers-Brown, who's a business communication manager at Milner Therapeutics. And we thank you for making it here in the last minute. We really appreciate it. And then we have Dr. Mike Snowden. He's the senior vice president at AstraZeneca. And we have Professor Gill, who's a professor at chemistry and also the president of the Royal Society of Chemistry. And our last panelist for today is Christiane Meritens, who's the founder and CEO of DoGoodery. And of course, our panel chair, Tarquin Bennett-Coles, who's the senior executive search consultant. We thank you all for being here, and I pass on the floor to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I wanted to start by saying thank you for all coming back after lunch. Excellent start. And also to thank GBR and the GAP Summit. If you think they are all volunteers giving of their time to make sure we all get mic'd up, we all get sorted out, and to sort out all the catering and everything else. So I just thought we'd start by saying thank you to them. So we're going to mix it up a little. And the plan is, obviously, we're talking about diversity and inclusion. I'm going to do a very brief introduction of myself and the topic, but you'll all be familiar, I hope, with the topic anyway. And then we're going to move along for everyone to give a brief introduction themselves. And then we're going to go straight to you, straight to the audience. So be prepared for early questions. If you have a specific person you'd like to answer that, please let us know in the question. And then I'm going to do my best to moderate what I think will be kind of organized chaos. But it would be great to get you all involved. So one of the things I wanted to pick up on that Adelina and others have told me is that I think there are 43 nationalities represented at this conference, which is, if we're talking about diversity and inclusion, what a fantastic start. And already, from my perspective, I feel a bit of a sort of imposter phenomenon. Here I am, the stale, male, pale at the front. And I'm chairing this, which I can't quite believe, but I am absolutely delighted about. Can I just very quickly ask, if English isn't your first language, can you just put your hand up?
Wow. Isn't.
Isn't. Okay, thank you. That's great. Wow. Okay, so the reason I asked that, of course, I'm very fortunate. Here we are in Cambridge. I live in Cambridge, speaking at a conference in English. But if there are questions or answers you need us to slow down or just go and please let us know. Okay, so just make sure you raise and give us the nod. The other thing I just wanted to sort of mention very briefly about me. So I'm in executive search or recruitment, as it's better known. Been doing that for about 2 decades. But I guess where I'm coming from isn't just that side, and of course recruitment into the life sciences and making sure those diversity role models is absolutely vital for the future. My background originally was a teacher, and obviously in the classroom spotting how to look after children who maybe were being bullied, and very often it was because of differences. So spotting how to make sure you include those who may sometimes have obvious differences, but sometimes they may be less obvious in terms of their learning styles. So I kind of come from background slightly different. And sharing a very personal anecdote, one of the reasons I'm in the life science recruitment industry is that my mother was living in the US. She caught HIV and sadly passed away from AIDS back at the beginning of the 2000s. But at that time when she was diagnosed, there was no cure. And I was going over to the US, and I was with a group of people who were profoundly impacted by this disease that was indiscriminate, but a lot of the news and the press made out that it wasn't. It was a particular group being targeted. And then, of course, it was my mother who was ill with this disease. There was the stigma that went with that. So I sort of feel, by accident, that I've been on the outside looking in and wanted to be somebody who can make some positive change. And I'm fortunate in my job now that I get to do that. And I'm just delighted that here we are with this panel, this experience, expertise on this subject. So before I say any more, I'd like to hand over to Christiana, first of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Tarquin. Hi, everybody. My name is Christiana Meritens, and first of all, I just have to say what a pleasure and honor it is to be here. I've had a very interesting journey from LA coming here, and even Border Patrol was like, "What are you doing in London?" I was like, "Well, I'm speaking at Cambridge," and they're like, "Very well then, go on." So, it is a joy, and Vicky and Adelina, I don't see either one of you, but just a big shout out to you and the entire crew. It's been a long journey. So I am the founder of DoGoodery. We are a consulting agency with a very specific lens on social impact. So we work with big brands like Amazon and Disney to help them think through their sustainability strategies, their education strategies, to science companies like Underwriters Laboratories. We're launching a big campaign around lithium-ion batteries this semester. I am not in college. This fall. And we also work with academia like University of Southern California and the County of Los Angeles around food equity issues. So my background, I started at the Walt Disney Company many, many years ago, and I oversaw our environmental education and STEM education portfolio across the company. And then I decided to take a big leap and go to a tiny environmental education nonprofit in DC where, mind you, they were $500,000 in debt. I was not given a salary. I had to raise my own salary. But it was a really entrepreneurial opportunity to figure out how to build something from like negative ground. And I, there as a deputy director, built our corporate portfolio, which is where I realized how many companies really need support in so many areas of doing good, hence the name DoGoodery. So that's when I started. DoGoodery is 2019, and just a quick comment about the name, and I'm sorry I'm gonna cuss, but when I started at Disney, my boss was like a tyrant. I love her, and she's a mentor, but she was this 4'11", I don't know what that translates to in centimeters, but tiny, and just like rough and gruff, and she always made fun of me for being so like jolly and me. And so many years later, when I told her what I was doing with this consulting agency, and she's like, "You know what? That makes sense because of you and all your DoGoodery bullshit." And so that is how the name DoGoodery started. So we've been in business for 3 years, and I can't, unfortunately, I learned that this is going to be publicized afterwards, so I can't say it too much, but I'm starting another company that's product oriented, and I get to take all the work I've done for the last many, many years and apply it to our own company. So I'm very excited, so honored to be here with this amazing group. Rob and I had dinner the other night, and I spilled so much pho on my shirt, and he didn't say a word. Not a word. Not a word. Just met all these other lovely people today in person. So thank you for letting me be here, and back to Tarquin.
Thank you. Fantastic. And next, if we could introduce Professor Gill Reid.
Thanks very much indeed, Tarquin, and likewise, thanks very much for the opportunity to be here. It's fantastic, it's great to meet lots of new people and lots of really inspiring people with great futures ahead of them. And I think our task today is to try to share a little bit of our own experiences around inclusion, diversity, what it means to us, what it might mean now, what it might mean in the future, and to try to help to maybe knock down some barriers. I think that's really important. I'm a chemist. I'm an inorganic chemist, for that matter, having started my academic career in Southampton some decades ago. And I stayed there all the way through. And I went straight to Southampton from Edinburgh, having done all my degrees in Edinburgh. So I did that one step, and I've stayed there ever since. And in that time, I've seen, everybody told me that was a crazy thing to do because you wouldn't get an academic job because you're not doing it the right way. And I'm a bit like that. I don't like to do things just the right way because I think there's more than one way to do everything, and that's a really important message, I hope, today. I've had great opportunities through that time, and I've said to some people at lunch today, my career's gone through several cycles of, when I was younger and had young kids, I was doing certain things because I couldn't do other things because I had the kids to look after, and there were all sorts, and it's an evolution. It wasn't planned. It's taken its course. I've tried to follow the things that motivate me, inspire me, that I feel that there's, the legacy for me is the people I work with. Of course, in academia, you've got to publish papers and find new things and all sorts of other stuff. But really, it's the people. And I really believe that getting teams of people to work well together, not to all have the same views, but to work well together, to respect each other, to challenge each other, That's a really important part of creating a successful environment. I'm absolutely delighted to have taken on the role of President of the Royal Society of Chemistry in July this year. The RSC has been, I think, set very high standards for equality and diversity and inclusion over recent years, and more broadly, because you start off in ED&I space and you find yourself in sort of bullying and harassment, people's behaviours, conduct. There's quite a matrix of different things going on there. And they're all interlinked. And I think the thing that I like about the way that the RSC does this is that they don't create evidence, they gather evidence, and from that they develop the reports. And these reports then set out for us the action plans to try to make things different. There's no point in just having a report sitting on a shelf. You've got to do something about it. And it's a long-term exercise. It's uncomfortable sometimes. We published the Missing Elements report just a few months ago about progression for black and minority ethnic chemists in the UK, and the stats are shocking, actually. But we're not unique. Chemistry is not unique. And the point is, unless you acknowledge and register these facts, you don't make a difference. You don't start to build an action plan and try to learn how to do things differently and try to learn to be a mentor and, challenge things that are going on around us. So I'm looking forward to our conversation this afternoon. Thanks very much for the opportunity to participate.
Thank you. And I should say, you've already made a difference because my daughter is going to continue with her chemistry GCSE. Thank you. Because I mentioned I was on a panel with you today. And I said, as a role model.
I'll go home now. Well, the going's good.
Yeah. And if I can also introduce Dr. Mike Snowden, who has a really successful period of time in Big Pharma from GSK and now at AstraZeneca, and he'll give you more detail on his background. But please, thank you for being with us too.
Thanks, Tarquin. It's intimidating sitting next to a chemist because my dad said I wasn't intelligent enough to be a chemist. so I had to be a biochemist.
So did mine.
But you made it, right? So I did biochemistry and spent nearly my whole life at GSK until the last 12 years at AstraZeneca. Very, very different companies, I have to say. And Tarquin actually stole my intro. Because I actually am white and I am male, but I'm also obese, obviously, and I'm also neurodiverse. And for me, neurodiversity was the sort of the click that took me out of this frozen middle, which is watching diversity around you and not doing anything about it. Like that was the. And I shared a little story that added to that. When AstraZeneca built its magnificent new building in Cambridge that has taken an inordinate amount of time to build. We saw the artist impression of this beautiful building and we had to comment on it about how wonderful it looked, apart from the chimney there looked rubbish and this bit down here didn't look so good. And then one person said, well, there is something wrong with this picture. What is it? And we're saying, well, yeah, that chimney's rubbish and that's a bit rubbish. No, there's something else wrong with this picture. And none of us, and PhDs, postdocs, we got papers coming out of our ears, none of us could understand what was wrong with the picture until somebody said, all the scientists are white men and they've got lab coats on, there are no women there and any diversity in the picture. And that just shocked me that I could not see that. And so that one person, Karen Sutherland, I don't know if you know her, she's very big in inclusion and diversity. She changed my concept, my life, for my own diversity, but for other people, I hope as well. And so I sponsor, and I'm part of the neurodiversity community, the LGBT community in AstraZeneca. And what we've seen is a mixture of enthusiastic groundswell of diverse groups coming up in these employee reference teams. We've seen the attempt at putting a corporate band around these people and saying, Mike, you're neurodiverse, you have to be like this, and here's your budget for neurodiversity. And I'm saying, well, actually, I'm a human, right? And I want to do it this way and my way. And so we've had the top-down versus the bottom-up type of approach. And we're hopefully meeting in the middle, which I think is the spirit of success. There are lots of ways of doing it. My motto is change one person at a time, because exponential growth, if I can do one, those two can do 4, we'll have it done in a week, guys. Exponential growth is absolutely extraordinary. We just have to change it for one person at a time and do it. So that's where I am.
Great. Thank you. That was a really great introduction. And I'm sorry for stealing your intro.
All right.
So I'd also like to introduce now to Paula Rogers-Brown, and she deserves a special thank you because she's literally come in at the 11th hour. Poor Jason couldn't make it. I know some of you will know Jason Mellard, but for personal reasons. So Paula, I think, is just back from annual leave and literally sat down to have a conversation at the Milner Institute of Therapeutics and then said, I've got to go. So thank you for being here. But also what I think you bring that's different too is perspectives from outside of the industry and then coming into industry as well. So similar to Christiana, we've got a mix of people here with NGO backgrounds, academic backgrounds, organisational backgrounds, as well as obviously industry, pharma and beyond. So feel free to think about that in some of your questioning, because this is a big topic. It's not just related to our sector. But over to you, Paula.
Thank you very much, Tarquin. And yes, really, really pleased to be here and happy to be able to step in for Jason. I'm the Business Community Manager and I run Connect Health Tech, which is an interdisciplinary community bringing together and integrating the physical and life sciences from across Cambridge and beyond. And that's under the auspices of the Milner Therapeutics Institute. So we're very much interested in people bringing together a community from industry, academia, whether you're an entrepreneur, researcher, scientist, or just have an interest, you're an engineer, you come from outside of the health tech space, but you're interested in it. We're very much interested in building a community that is inclusive to you. And one of the great things about Connect Health Tech is that it is all about one of our very, very first standpoints in creating this community, which is driven by an online community of over 800 members, is that it democratises access to the wealth of expertise and knowledge across Cambridge and beyond. We have around 17 countries represented across our 800-odd membership, which is fantastic. We are 24/7, 365. And being digital first in that sense, pushed by COVID, but that really helped us. It has meant we were able to build a real community that can connect and collaborate and foster opportunities across interdisciplinary disciplines, because you don't know where the knowledge, expertise or skills may come from. It might be out of your own discipline area. How are you going to find them? How are you going to identify them? Connect Health Tech can help you do that. My own background, as Tarquin said, I'm not a scientist by trade, so I do see things differently within my own organisation now and have done. I come from industry, not-for-profits in the the education sector, working for government as well. So a lot of different areas, human resources, and now into programme and project management. But, you know, diversity, inclusion and being passionate about it, as I said, you don't know where that knowledge is coming from. And it's being open-minded to where the knowledge, where the skills, where the expertise might be coming from. We, all of us, and me included, we're very much used to a certain style of leadership. We talk about the male, the pale, the stale. We're used to it. This is how things have been. And if we don't take the step of trying to change things for just one person, we won't amplify the message about diversity. We won't be able to empower women. We won't get that groundswell coming in, students doing STEM and then into academia, staying in academia or going on elsewhere. We really must take those proactive steps about being open to diversity, open to inclusion, to really change the narrative and the agenda.
Fantastic, thank you. I almost feel like we could stop. I mean, we've got to do another introduction, but it's been such a good start. And if I could introduce Dr. Robert Rivers, who has come again over from the States. So thank you both. This is not an insignificant distance, so thank you. Working for the NIH, but also he's the Office of the Minority Health Research Coordinator. I know you've done lots of work there looking at some of the data and the stats about how you can encourage diversity and inclusion. And we talked just very briefly before we all got together about the missing E, as it were, the equality or equity piece for diversity and inclusion. That's something that we might touch on, or if people have got questions on that, please do. But over to you, Paula.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for the invitation, and it's good to be with you all. My name's Rob Rivers. I'm from Kentucky, so I'm from a small rural area. I ended up doing my PhD here in chemistry. Then I took a gap year, not a summit, but a full year. So I just mentioned that because it's okay even after your graduate education to take the break. And I went and lived in Peru. So yo hablo español como fluido, entonces la gente quiere preguntar en español, no me pasa nada. But it also, living in Peru and growing up in a southern part of the United States where I was like the only black kid in the calculus class, the only black kid in the chemistry AP class. And then coming to Cambridge, I think there was 2 people in this, they take a photo here. It's called a matriculation photo. I think there was 2 in that photo. And then in the chemistry department, postdocs, grad students all while I was here, we were 4. So I think I entered the diversity, equity, inclusion space just in existence. Because I feel in most rooms I go to, and I think others can share it, it's this sense you walk into the room and there's no one else. And that's what I think my drive and my passion in this space, now working at the National Institutes of Health. How do I ensure that when the next time I go to a human proteomics organization meeting, that I see someone that isn't necessarily a white male, but represents the full diversity of this world? In a previous session, Shola said, "You're Albanian."
Yeah.
That's amazing. Representation matters. And I feel like at the end of the day, to answer the numerous problems we're facing, whether it's pandemics or how do we ensure we have circular economies and sustainabilities, we need to ensure that we're not just inviting people to the table, but there's place at the table. They feel comfortable to be their full selves. And we can all work together as humans to find a solution to these problems. So I think it's time for y'all to talk, because we've said a lot, but I've listened in on lunchtime. Y'all got the questions and the insights. I'm taking notes, and I'll take them back to the bureaucracy.
Fantastic. So yes, on that note, let's open it up to the floor. So questions, please.
Do you want us to I think you have to call.
Oh yes. Do you want to, if you have a specific question for a specific person, mention them. But if you could, as you said before, mention who you are, where you're from, and then obviously you can aim the question laser-sighted, or if you just want to go scattergun, we're all ready.
Hi, I'm Miles. I'm a scientist at AstraZeneca. Question for everyone. It's kind of ironic that there's a white male going first and then...
Yeah, take that microphone off it.
Not only am I white male, but I'm a young, straight, white, middle-class male. So, but my question is, as somebody with extraordinary privilege, what can I do as I move forward in my career to benefit inclusion and diversity across the industry? That's for everybody.
Great question. I'm going to start. Yeah, okay, go on.
Sorry, I should let you chair. I apologise, Tarquin.
No, so please.
Don't stay silent. If you make sure that your voice is heard, and it's heard for the benefit of the diverse community. Everybody, every single person in the room, in any environment, has a role to play to make sure that we shift the dial. If we wait for chronology, we'll be here forever. We need to be proactive, and I think, you and I and everybody else need to, be bold and challenge behaviours, challenge statements, comments, and encourage a more inclusive environment, because that's the way we get the best out of our people. So go for it.
Yes, and it's amazing that you acknowledge it. A lot of people refuse to acknowledge their privilege. And that's, I think, the first step. And allyship is everything. For me, growing up, I'm half Latina, but you wouldn't know that looking at me, right? So I've gotten to walk through the world with white privilege, no problem. And I think about, so me, the struggle has been a woman in business. And all of the men who have been allies to me since I was my first job not working for my family restaurant, was at a gas station, a petrol station, not as a cashier, but out on the island, changing oil, changing tires, because I felt like I needed to do something different. And our boss, about as white Irish as you could possibly imagine, and he really supported me because I was harassed constantly by men. But I was like, I'm just gonna keep persevering. And so having allyship in men has been quintessential to my success. So that is a really important role that you can play.
Something as old-fashioned about as spending some time in somebody else's shoes. So we talk about allyship, which usually means reading a lot by yourself, and trying to understand the community. But I think the times that I've had have been most rewarding is actually sitting down and talking to individuals and imagining what's going on. So it's old-fashioned, but when you're talking to people and you're interacting with people, especially neurodiversity, is where I come from, there are people who just do things differently. And you've got to work out why they're not staring at your face, why they're not taking notes, why they're looking out the window. These are clues that they want to work in a different way. They don't want to be rude, but so it really is as old-fashioned as that. Spend some time in somebody else's shoes.
I think, just to underpin what Christiana had said, I think it's fantastic that you've acknowledged that and want to be an ally and a champion. I think really allyship is an untapped, and being a champion is an untapped opportunity to really proactively progress the agenda of diversity and inclusion. And from a male perspective, it is about championing those female peers around you, or calling out something that you see as not being right, and being open to how other styles that you're of working and also leadership around you as well. It's just about self-awareness and ensuring that you actually do say when you see something, because we all know right from wrong. But sometimes we can be a bit skewed because this is how we've always seen it being done or said, or etc. So yeah, just standing up and calling it out, and allyship, beautiful thing.
Do you want? No? I'd also just add travel. I mean, you've done it. I think traveling to other places, meeting people from other cultures, backgrounds, spending time with them, learning, being open and curious, that makes a huge difference to your perspective on the world. It always worries me when I meet people and I look at their CVs and they've just been based in one place for their whole period of time. I think, how open are you going to be for other perspectives? Okay, wow, this is great.
Good afternoon, my name is Brian. I'm a PhD student in chemistry and biochemistry at the University of Tokyo. So I have a series of questions. The first one is a general one, and the second one is a sociocultural question. So the first one is, how diverse should an organization be? And when does diversity go awry? Second question is a sociocultural question. Having said that, I come from Japan. So as you know, Japan is a very patriarchal society. It's very male-dominated. And at the same time, it's very nationalistic. So in that perspective, what can we do to shake the system and do a paradigm shift in that sociocultural perspective? Thank you.
Great questions. We're going to have to stick to one question each next time. Nice, but nice move. Nice move. Give you that. So the three I've got down. So if we just go through that, how diverse can a company be? I mean, I looked up before we started, and there's been reports from McKinsey on delivery through diversity, reports from PwC, and they all talk about the competitive advantage. So there's definitely an advantage to having a diverse workforce, and from the leadership down, not just the bottom up. But let me put this across, Robert, because you missed out last time. Do you want to?
Actually, the previous answers were great, so I didn't just want to piggyback. Those answers were spot on. It's a great question. I think did you frame the question when diversity goes awry? Was that specifically?
And when does it go awry?
That's it.
When does diversity go too much? When does it become detrimental than being beneficial?
Unpack it for us. So because a question like that comes with an experience of something. So tell me, what's the experience that leads to this question? Because that will allow us.
Everybody now.
No, but like this is a discussion, right?
Do we have a couch that we could just move
Okay. We'll stop there, but it's a situation. Oftentimes there's specific experience with initiatives, whether it's diversity or inclusion, that might have left people feeling really raw around the edges. So that's why it's very contextual. What Tarquin mentioned, studies have shown that diverse teams often perform better. But on the flip side, diverse teams also gel slower and get there sometimes slower. But that's not always the problem, right? The issue is people feeling uncomfortable in spaces where in the past they felt normatively fine. And if cultures of corporations and people can get more used to feeling uncomfortable, we'll be in a better spot to answer the problems we're facing. Because when we're just sitting in comfort, we're not thinking creatively. And that's an indirect answer to the question of when it goes awry. I don't think it's necessarily going awry. I think we're not challenging ourselves to actually solve the problems we're facing. You don't have to agree with me, guys.
And I was just going to add to that. I'm looking for some provocation. So I hope there's going to be diversity of opinion here too. So feel free to ask questions and direct questions that will put us on the spot. But,
I was going to say, I think it goes awry when you move to a metric without the discussion.
Yep.
So, there's McKinsey, this is where you should be, 48, 52 minimum. And I think that's really destructive because you race to that without a pyramid of development in the organisation. So I think that's when it goes awry. And being scientists, you try and metricize everything, right? And this is not about metrics. This is about individuals, humans and hearts and just being human beings. I was interested. I didn't know Tarquin was actually did what he does, but we started off thinking, as long as we look like the outside world in chemistry or biochemistry or any of the other disciplines we have, then we're good, right? But then the way you look at the outside world is usually through other people. So if they're saying to us, well, we've put your job on the board and we got 100 people and there were 99 white blokes, because that's what the market is, then that's what you think. But then you need to go back and say that is not what we want. That is not the way we're going to go. And I think so that the conversation and this pyramid idea is important, but that's when I've seen it go awry. Numbers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also the other one was on the paradigm shift. So how do we initiate that sort of seismic paradigm shift if you're talking about a whole cultural society where that's particularly difficult. And if you look at the world as we know at the moment, there's huge disparity in different countries. Disparity based on gender, based on religion, based on all sorts of things. So, it's a big question, but I'm going to throw it back to the panel and give them a chance to answer it.
We're talking centuries of systemic patriarchy, racism, sexism, bigotry, and so this notion that the filling in the metric, that it's going to be solved overnight is bonkers to me. And I really appreciate everybody on this panel for multiple reasons. Paula, even though we just met, I appreciate you for many reasons. And, I think yesterday Paula Dowdy talked about failure. And when I first started DoGoodery, we did create a division around DEI and working with corporations and organizations around DEI training. It was a big mistake. And the person leading it was very good at it. But thinking that a few workshops and that is going to change the way people, their beliefs and their fundamental beliefs, it's insane. I'm like, what was I thinking? And I was just arrogant. And I thought we could do something interesting and different. So to answer your question, I don't have an answer, but what I do know is being intentional and hiring well and thoughtfully and not looking at someone's background based on their job title, but who they are as a person, their emotional intelligence, their willingness to work with other people. You know, that to me, it's just going to take time in who we are in the world. And I'm a big believer in therapy. I'm a big believer in executive coaching. I have both of those people who I see every single week because I constantly have to be reminded that I don't know everything. And I need a lot of outside influence to help me be a better human, be a better leader. And it's hard, but it really takes thoughtfulness and like slow. And you know what Rob was saying, it's okay that having a diverse team may take some time, but anything good takes time, anything.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. I think, you know, universities are, one of the reasons that I love working in a university is because it's full of a rich and diverse culture of students and young people, and it's people with different views of the world, and just, you know, challenging each other, challenging them, you know, challenging themselves. And yet we've ended up with a structure over centuries that's really doesn't represent that. So we're losing all that diversity at that early stage that's there. We're not representing what our community, what makes universities such an exciting place to be. So, you know, I get my cultural input from all the people I collaborate with, from the students I talk to, from people, you know, being in different parts of the world, and it's fantastic. And I feel that, I think for me, I kind of agree with the point of statistics. I mean, when you're just going for numbers, you've lost the point, actually, haven't you? You've just, the point of diversity is to respect different views and to be open-minded and hear what other people are saying. You may or may not agree with everything they say, but if it makes you think about things a little bit differently and go and seek out inputs from other places, that's surely got to be a good thing. And that's what fires me up in my day-to-day job. So, you know, I'm not sure if I answered the question, but...
That's great. I would just add, being a teacher by background, is that start them young. So, you know, you teach from a young age, you bring in stories from other cultures, you celebrate the similarities, because that's what brings people together, and then you're curious and open about the differences and explain them. And it's amazing how you can have people with diametrically opposed views that actually, when they talk them through, you know, and you do a value continuum, actually they both want the same thing. There's the person who says we should have nuclear arms because it's preventative, and the one who says we should get rid of all nuclear arms. Neither wants the nuclear conflict. They just have two different, you know, ideas about how they can get there. So I would say when they're very little, that's, if you start there, hopefully by the time they're in leadership roles, they'll have their own idea. Other questions, please? This is great.
You want to go first?
You can go first.
Thank you.
So polite, everybody.
Bobby, I'm from Illumina, and I'm also a chair of our EDI agenda out within Illumina. So I'm going to put up a question. So experience. We do quite a few initiatives, and we work across diversity, inclusion, equity. But my issue has always been is that it's still not inclusive enough, right? So when we put, you know, an event on, we're only going to get a number of people that, you know, put themselves into a category of not, you know, of being of that background. And so we want to show that it's more broadly for everyone, regardless of what background you're from, what color of skin, religion, belief, political belief, whatever have you. So we've noticed and experienced that diversity is just not enough. It is a numbers game, like, you know, Mike mentioned. You know, it's a lot about numbers. We felt that inclusion is not enough to get all-inclusive for everyone to have a feeling that they've got the right opportunity to do something, regardless of what the outcome is. So my question is that, in your experience, what are the type of metrics or impact metrics that one can do within corporate environments or within your work environment that actually makes everybody feel like they're championing something that makes a difference?
Another light question, thank you. Excellent.
Well, I think, just as a starting point there, Bobby, I think I think it's been mentioned on the panel already. It's about celebrating differences and different cultures and acknowledging what you've got right now. So, who is on your workforce? Where do they come from? What do they celebrate? You know, whether it's they celebrate Christmas or Eid, or is it Ramadan? How do we be more inclusive to the different cultures that we have within our organisation? What are we doing to celebrate them, to make people feel that they are part and one of the organisational family? It's the little bits. It's not the big ticket wins and really being overt and explicit, but it's those little things within the organisation, I think, at a team level. And certainly, from my experience, those things matter to people, because if you say that, you know, it's going to be, you know, Ramadan over this particular time and we're doing this or this, etc. People, oh, okay, but that will resonate to you know, members of your organisation. I think those little bits really help, and they really make people think, I'm valued as part of this organisation. That's just one suggestion.
I think to add to that, Paula, it also helps to educate others who might not start off with that information.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, it's probably everybody starts from their own position here, from your own experience. You were brought up, the environment you were brought up in, and all these other things. And it's kind of learning, and I think that learning process is really important. I think it helps to, because the next conversation isn't the message from on high about Ramadan or anything else. It's your colleagues talking about and celebrating, and it's bringing people together who are working together but don't necessarily feel that they're together. So it's getting that proper connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's back to, Robert, your point about it takes time. Trust takes time to build. So you can expect to build that dynamic. It's going to take a while to get through.
Building community, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's recognizing the humanity in others. Because the messages, either directly or indirectly, over centuries and millennia, is that the different is we're not all the same. So it's like finding that humanity through smaller events that build the community. So if there's something larger that happens, there is buy-in because, oh, my buddy Fred's going to be there. It's about Ramadan, but Fred's going to be there. And Fred's a good mate. And that, it's slower, but that community, I think, is a lasting community of equity and inclusion where people feel comfortable to be at that table versus, as Snowden said, like, we just don't want a quota, you know.
Yeah, I was trying to be consistent in my own mind, being neurodiverse, is that running to the metric which celebrates success is not something that I don't think is very valuable. There's some metrics along the way which are, and in my life at AstraZeneca and science life, you know, you don't get anything if you don't prove something to a lot of grizzly old scientists who need to have the data. So we spent a lot of time trying to get the data, and I think that is one of the challenges of what do people want to share and what can you use in different parts of the world, in the US and the UK and Sweden and other places that we work in. But once you've got some of those figures, showing the organisation the figures without a so what is really useful. Yeah. So when you say things like, we have 10% of women in leadership positions at this level, that's a fact. And then you get the organisation to go, hang on a minute, that can't be right. And then you get the conversation, and then people work and build and build. So I think data along the way is useful in a science and technology-based environment, but the ultimate goal where you need to be for success and then pack it in and do something else is not useful.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Chantal. I'm a master student at Lund University. And I kind of wanted to ask a question about maybe like the other side of what we're talking about, meaning the people that are in the minority group. And the reason I'm asking this question, so my mom quit her job in her late 40s to start her own company in the whiskey industry, which is extremely old-fashioned, extremely white, extremely male, extremely rich. And for her, basically, when she entered, it was like an outstanding factor that she was a woman from the former GDR. So it was really like an outstanding factor, and she expected, okay, other women would help her. But instead what would happen is that there's only one, the feeling was for a lot of people there that there was only one female seat at the table. So instead what happened is there was no allyship or there was no support from other women. Instead what happened is that the women tried to kind of out-compete each other because they felt like, okay, I have to compete against her instead of like empowering each other. So yeah, for those people basically in that group, how would you address that kind of competitive feeling to empower each other instead of like trying to, outcompete each other?
Without breaking confidentiality, you have the perfect person to answer that, really.
So I would love to meet your mother one of these days. But the second company I'm starting is in a very similar industry. And my founding team is all men, and I was very intentional about that. To the very start of this, it started earlier this year, because it is a very, very male-dominated industry. And the assumption when I go to the place that I need to go to do the thing we're doing is that I am the secretary, and that I am not the founder. And what's amazing is the men on my team jump in immediately, and they're like, no, it's all her. And then it's incredible how you start to see sort of this sort of ripple effect of people being like, okay. And your mom grew up in a totally different time, right? Like a totally different time where we weren't allowed as women to be successful, and we have been conditioned to be competitive with each other. And that hasn't changed. I mean, it's certainly changing. And it's going to go back to the original comment about allyship. And, one of the I've been so lucky to have both great men and women, like executives in my life, who have, instead of being threatened by my youthfulness at the time, and that is what I aspire to be. And for you, that's going to be the same thing for all of you, because all of you will be very successful. You're already here. And so your opportunity is to do exactly what people have done for me in my career, and that is truly supporting one another. Now, if someone's an asshole, that does not mean that you need to support them. But if there is opportunity and you see they're only being kind of a terrible person because it's out of fear, then take a moment and see, like, okay, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? Because if there's an opportunity to reach across and go, okay, and I can't tell you how many times I have judged people, especially when I was younger, be like, oh. And then I totally just took a moment, and some of my best friends and best colleagues came from those assumptions. So I really do want to meet your mom. So it's a great question, and I think women, oh my God, I love you men, don't get me wrong, I do. But we're pretty amazing. Women are badass, and when men and women come together, it's like the world's unstoppable. Unstoppable. So be good to each other, ladies, and men, be good to the women. And women, if the men are cool, you can be good to them too. So.
Anyone else want to follow? Brilliant answer, by the way. But.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Christiane on this. It's changing. It's a changing environment, and even recent personal experience has I could identify that I was becoming a threat, to others, and you have to, you have to hope and pray, and all of you, you are the future. So it's down to you guys to really shift that and empower each other, women for women, men for women, and vice versa. It doesn't matter, it shouldn't matter. And particularly in a university, coming from a university environment, collaboration is what we're all about. Whether it's we're collaborating on research or science experiments in the lab, etc. We're all about collaborating and getting that paper out into hopefully Nature or whatever it might be. So collaborating, why do we lose that thread as we then move on and become competitive when we actually should be really championing each other and the world's a small place. And it's getting smaller, so you never know where you might end up crossing, somebody who was a threat or you were competitive with. So just empower each other is what I would really say. But it's a changing environment. It's not perfect right now. Hopefully things will be better in the future, but we must be proactive.
Yeah. I think it's also about confidence. I think sometimes it shows a lack of confidence when you get that sort of confrontation, and it's again it comes back to dialogue, talking to each other. So I think confidence is actually really important, and confidence grows as you grow. I mean, as your experience widens. I can say that personally. I mean, I can think of many situations where I was incredibly nervous about something, and actually I can reflect back on it and think, actually, I learned a lot from doing that. But that confidence to you can achieve success in two ways. You can achieve success by getting your head down and working well with other people, the team, whatever it might be, and doing a great job. Or you can get on in life to some extent by trampling on other people. And you have to set your own parameters, actually. I mean, I'm very, very clear about where I think, you know, in the latter is a short-term thing, and it will bite at some point. So it's, you know, it's not the way that people generally get on. And as the momentum builds, that will become even more the case, I think. So, you know, I think it's a world that's shifting, and we've got to make sure that we keep it moving forwards.
Yeah, I'm conscious of time. We've probably got time for one more question, but I want to make sure I go back to the panel for a takeaway so they can leave you with words of wisdom that will disappear into the ether. So,
and we'll be around afterwards if you guys want to chat too.
Hi, my name is Joella and I am a PhD student in the US, so I have a more US-specific question. As an international student, I've seen in US an exclusion that these international students even exist and they want opportunities that go beyond a visa to the United States. And I've seen that especially as a graduate student when you are blocked to having so many opportunities, fellowships, just because of your nationality. And you cannot get that from any other country or from where you're born because you're not studying there. You're studying in the US, but you cannot take that from the US because you're not a US citizen. And there have been programs of diversity and inclusion where I myself wanted to apply. I thought I can bring diversity. I've seen so many cultures. I come from different cultures. I was blocked even in the first step because I wasn't even eligible to apply. And I'm quite passionate about that. I have many friends who face that issue. And I want to raise awareness of that. And I don't know how can I do it in a single person level. I do believe in the power of students. I do believe we have power. I'm fearless about it. I know we stand above any administrative level. And I think administration in my school might not like me very much for all the emails that I've sent to them. But it goes beyond that. It goes to a federal level. And I don't know how to make a change. I want to make a change. If I ever go to policy, I just want to go for that particularly, to open opportunities, because no one, chooses where to be born or where to come from, but someone can choose how to develop their potential and where to use it and how to use it.
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to say, yes. Speak to the organisers of the GATT Summit, GBR. That's how this all started. This was a group of people who got together, students like mine, who said, we want to do things differently. We're not going to have a normal conference or a summit. We're going to do something differently. So there are people in the room with recent experience, probably very similar to yours, who I'm sure will be able to share that with you. So I'd say grab them as well. But I hand over to the US colleagues.
As an individual of the US government, I would prefer to have a longer dialogue with you individually, but what I'd say in a fully public setting, there's certain fellowships and training opportunities that are available from the US taxpayer, regardless of citizenship, and they're the K99R00. Unfortunately, currently, there's not a specific graduate studentships that the US government sponsors. However, I have amazing colleagues at the Howard Hughes Medical Institute that do fund regardless of citizenship status, residency status. Yes. And unfortunately, I have no ability, because we've tried, from an executive level to change said things. It has to come from a congressional level.
All I will say is this. Every time I travel overseas, I am just in awe of how many people speak English. And us in the States don't try. The only reason I speak Spanish is because my mother's from El Salvador. So I think international students and international people are some of the best people I've hired. And yes, you are absolutely right. Things need to change, but Lord, a lot of things need to change in the US. So I'm going to leave it up to our bureaucrat over here to help us make that happen.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Right, so very quickly, I'm going to grab each of you now, and could you just give me a thought, a takeaway for the audience that they can take with them related to diversity and inclusion. So can I start with you, Christiana?
Sure. Competition is great. Competition is really important. It's what spurs innovation and what drives innovation, but collaboration is so much more productive. So be competitive, be interesting, but never try to be the most interesting person in the room, because I promise you, you're never going to be the smartest person in the room. ever. And if you are, get out of that room. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And, you know, just be good to each other. And I know it sounds so cheesy, but I'm not kidding. Like, kindness. Our hashtag at DoGoodery is Tiny Kind Empire, because big empires fail. But if we keep it tiny and kind, maybe we can grow a little bit of an empire. So just be good and be collaborative to one another.
So I would say that the main message I would encourage is to look for mentors and be mentors to each other, to people of all from all different backgrounds, younger, older, it doesn't matter. It's about actually taking a bit of time and talking and just hearing. You learn from other people. As you're mentoring people, you learn just as much as hopefully you're able to give. And that can't be a bad thing.
I was really struck by your comments about confidence, and you can give confidence to people. And one of the phrases we haven't heard today, we heard a lot about advocacy, but the other one is psychological safety. You can provide an environment for others to flourish. That's really easy if you're interested in people and you spend time in other people's shoes. So if you can't be an advocate because you don't know enough about their particular area, you can create an environment to learn about it. So think about what you do on a daily basis to help other people be themselves. That's all I do.
I would say be open-minded. I think I said in my opening statement, you don't know where the knowledge, the expertise, the skills, that opinion, just that, oh my goodness, you're wearing a fabulous dress, that might give confidence to somebody, you know. It just being open can change so many things in the way you approach a problem, a challenge, an opportunity. Be open-minded and don't be closed to anything. And also be that ally. Really, really be that ally, and a proactive one at that.
Closing words. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. No, actually, forget the tyranny of the either or and embrace the revolutionary of the and. We're in time of pandemic. So in this pandemic and everything else, it's not either we're sustainable and we solve it, or either we're equitable and we do that, or it's not either or, it's and. We must ensure that equity and sustainability, all these things are part and parcel of who we are, what we do, and when we have power, because we don't have power now, that we don't forget it and then start spouting platitudes when we're sitting up here.
Yeah, well, please join me in thanking the just fantastic panel. I'll just leave you with this little shot as a reminder. Yeah.
You guys don't want to leave, do you? Well, we're here if you guys have some, right?
Yeah.
If you guys want to come down and talk to us, we'll be here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tarquin. Big round of applause for our moderator.